Good afternoon and welcome to the news on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Shehan Radadunga. Now first up, here are your headlines. Sangeet Nipun Sanat Nandasiri has passed away. Petroleum trade unions continue satyagraha, demanding an end to attempts to privatize the CPC. Cabinet approval given for a solar power plant in Trincomalee. Israel protests. Prime Minister Netanyahu delays legal reforms after day of strikes. Now on to your top story. Veteran vocalist and musician Sangeet Nipun, Professor Sanat Nandasiri, has passed away at the age of 81. The late Emeritus Professor Sangeet Nipun Sanat Nandasiri was the former Chancellor of the University of Visual and Performing Arts in Sri Lanka, and he passed away at his residence. Born on the 15th of February 1942 in Gotatua, Sanat Nandasiri received his education at the Gotatua Mahavidyalaya, St. Matthew's College and the Mahabodhi Vidyalaya. He tied the knot with vocalist Malkanthi Piris in 1971 and was the father of 2 children. He was the 3rd Chancellor of the University of Visual and Performing Arts, and as a veteran musician had served as the head of the Department of the Institute of Aesthetic Studies and as the first Dean of the Faculty of Music of the University of Visual and Performing Arts. He was honoured with an honorary professorship as a tribute to his outstanding contribution to the field of creative music in Sri Lanka. His contributions to Sri Lanka's music includes a number of albums including Eda Meda Turu and Bonda Meedum. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Musicians Guild, Janaka Wickramasinghe, told Newsfirst the funeral arrangements will be announced later. Now in other news, a discussion got underway at the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited in Kolonnava with regard to the decision required to oppose the privatization of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Now the Petroleum Trade Union Collective launched a satyagraha campaign against attempts to privatize the CPC.
The Petroleum Trade Union Collective launched a satyagraha campaign on Monday opposite the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited in Kolonnava against attempts to privatize the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. All trade unions except the Executive Officers Trade Unions are participating in the satyagraha. The trade unions said that around 400 filling stations that generate a high revenue are to be given to 4 overseas firms, and they launched the satyagraha program demanding an immediate end to such attempts. In addition, they demand to suspend attempts to award fuel distribution to the north and the east to Lanka IOC alone.
This is a problem for the entire nation. That is why we are fighting for this. If foreign companies are being brought down to increase competition and lower the prices of fuel, Minister Kanchana Wijesekara has a responsibility to tell the people by how much the litre of fuel would be reduced. We would like to challenge the minister. We know that he cannot say so. Minister Kanchana will boast today to say that he has done something very heroic. But this is not the case. He is committing treason to the country by letting foreign companies acquire the assets of this company. In just a few days, the people of this country will show the consequences of this. Even if the price of a litre of petrol or diesel increases to 1,000 rupees, the control will not be with the government and the people will be helpless.
Sri Lanka's cabinet has given the green light to award licenses to Sinopec, United Petroleum, Australia and RM Parks of USA in a collaboration with Shell PLC to enter the fuel retail market in Sri Lanka. Manoj Gupta, the managing director of LIOC, tweeted that 34 more LIOC filling stations are set to commence physical operations within March 2023, further strengthening the footprints of LIOC in the country.
Now, 7 companies have submitted EOIs for the proposed new refinery in Hambantota.
7 companies have submitted expression of interests for the proposed new refinery in Hambantota by the deadline fixed for Monday. Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara tweeted that the Technical Evaluation Committee and other procurement committees will evaluate EOIs and issue the request for proposals to suitable applicants. These 7 firms are Grant and Shearer Limited, Lagos based in Nigeria, China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation, Petrico Capital based in Malaysia, Whitall Group based in Singapore, Martin Tejerat Corporation based in Iran, Hari Management Service Private Limited with Mark Investment, Abu Dhabi based in Sri Lanka and UAE, Dandaniya Engineering Sales and Service Syndicate based in Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka's Cabinet of Ministers granted approval for the construction of a solar power plant in Sampur, Trincomalee via a joint venture between the Ceylon Electricity Board and the National Thermal Power Corporation Limited of India. The 135 megawatt solar power plant will be constructed at the site of the previously proposed Sampur coal power plant. Phase 1 of the project will see the construction of a 50 megawatt solar power plant at the cost of $42.5 million. In addition, $23.6 million will be spent for the construction of a 40-kilometer long 220 megawatt transmission line from Sampur to Kappalture. Phase 2 of the project will see the construction of an 85 megawatt solar power plant and 220 megawatt transmission line. This project is expected to be completed within 2 years from 2024 to 2025. The Indian government has agreed to promote and strengthen renewable energy sector cooperation between both countries. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding between Sri Lanka and India with regard to energy sector cooperation. Accordingly, private and public entities in both India and Sri Lanka will work on this project. The Cabinet had granted approval for the solar power, wind power and biofuel projects to be implemented under the agreement.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has said that the island nation will become the first country in the region to adopt a green economy. He said that a green economic policy focused on renewable energy will be introduced within the next 2 months.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe held a meeting with investors who attended the Sri Lanka Green Energy Summit at the President's office on Monday. President Wickremesinghe also expressed his gratitude to the investors who participated in the Clean Green Energy Summit and pledged to provide the necessary facilities to meet their investment requirements.
Now, the Election Commission said it is yet to receive a response from the Finance Ministry with regard to funding the local government election 2023.
The Election Commission said it expects a positive response from the Finance Ministry. At the same time, the Election Commission said it expects to meet Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena for talks this week over the same matter. A senior official at the Election Commission told Newsfirst that the members will meet on the 4th of April 2023 to discuss the step regarding the local government election.
The State Minister of Local Government and Provincial Councils, Janaka Vakkumbura, says steps have been taken to deploy the commissioners and secretaries who have been delegated the authority of the local government bodies on duty for 24 hours a day. The State Minister said this step was taken to deal with potential disasters that may occur with the ongoing weather conditions. The State Minister added that the support of the chairman of the coordinating committee meeting will be sought in this regard. Amnesty International Senior Director Deprose Muchina says that Sri Lanka is one of the countries or one of the many countries that has disrupted the right to protest of the people.
Amnesty International Senior Director Deprose Muchina is in Colombo for the regional launch of Amnesty's Global Annual Report. Deprose Muchina was the key speaker at the regional launch of the Annual Report 2023 held in Colombo that saw multiple diplomats attending the launch.
Human rights came under attack. We saw repression of the most calculated order. And this repression did not pick and choose where it happened, because we saw global protest movement being faced with brute force, with killings, with mass arrests, and with all manner of human rights violations, not least in this country, in this region, and in this continent. How to use resources of the state to repress rights, and how to use denial of protection of human rights to undermine the very spirit of human rights. This happened in Ethiopia, this happened in Myanmar, this happened in Sri Lanka, this happened in Afghanistan, this happened in India. So around the world, repression and assault of the protest movement became commonplace. This year, Amnesty launched a global right to protest initiative, because we really believe that for freedoms to thrive, people should be given an opportunity to protest In Sri Lanka, police use live ammunition, use tear gas, water cannons against largely peaceful protests. We're calling upon governments, in particular governments of South Asia, to stop using the pretext to repress dissent, to prevent discussions of human rights in countries, to stop the practice of deploying legislation not even needed as a way of demobilizing protest movement and accountability movement that has emerged in the last couple of years. We believe that it is important at this particular time that a new leadership imagination emerges in the global south to deal with the many of the global crises that our report mentions. It is one thing to call for solidarity when our allies are under attack. What we've been disappointed with is countries completely demobilizing when they need to be mobilizing for human rights protection. And this is something that is taking place in particular in this region, where we know that there is a discussion around support from the International Monetary Fund that has been discussed between your government as well as yourselves. Amnesty International calls for transparency on that deal so that everything that is being debated is within the public purview, for social protection to be prioritized and for human rights to be enhanced, because no aid mechanism or loan mechanism should diminish human rights. Everything that happens between countries as part of cooperation should enhance protection of people, their safety, and their ability to be able to pursue their own rights. So with this,
given the current economic crisis and human rights situation in Sri Lanka, Dipros Muchina aims to use his presence to highlight and stress on the urgent need to protect and promote the rights of the island's 22 million people. Dipros Muchina is a Senior Director for Regional Human Rights Impact at Amnesty International, where he oversees Amnesty regional officers across the world to lead the mandate of expanding human rights footprint. He had previously worked with the United States Agency for International Development and the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa.
Now, in the meantime, a coalition of leading South African human rights groups have questioned their government's invitation to Sri Lankan individuals with links to alleged war criminals for a study tour on reconciliation and transitional justice. This was according to a report by the International Truth and Justice Project, Sri Lanka.
According to the letter drafted by the South African human rights groups, the Sri Lankan Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri and the Minister of Justice, Prison Affairs and Constitutional Reforms, Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, had arrived on a working visit to South Africa at the invitation of South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. The letter emphasized that the purpose of the visit, according to the press statement, was to learn that the South African experience in regard to the establishment of and work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, to promote reconciliation in Sri Lanka. The human rights groups allege that the invitation to the Sri Lankan officials by the government of South Africa is concerning in view of allegations of ongoing human rights violations, the suppression of civil society in Sri Lanka, and a failure by the Sri Lankan government to ensure criminal accountability for gross human rights violations perpetrated during the 1983 to 2009 civil war.
Now, the admission of first-year students for the year 2023 in government and government-approved schools took place today.
10,175 government schools exist in Sri Lanka, of which 9,158 schools provide education in the primary sector. The number of students entering the first grade annually is approximately 340,000. Therefore, special programs were organized at a school level to welcome the new students admitted to the first grade across the island today.
The chairman of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, Janaka Ratnayaka, said that he would respond to the finance minister on Tuesday over the reasons provided to him to remove him from the post of PUCSL chairman. Ratnayaka said that he categorically rejects all reasons that have been provided to remove him from the post.
I received the document citing reasons for my removal by the finance minister. 5 charges have been filed against me and these are baseless allegations. I will respond to these claims today. These allegations claim that representing the public and going to court seeking relief for the public is an offence committed by a public sector employee. The PUCSL filed a case with the Court of Appeal to ensure that electricity is supplied for the students facing exams. The government is of the position that a public sector employee should not go to court. The PUCSL is bound to always support the people and to protect them. The other allegations include going to court to seek relief for the people and criticizing Minister Kanchana Wijesekara, who is the subject minister.
Now for some news in brief.
A workshop to educate journalists regarding the responsible reporting of incidents of deaths by suicide was held yesterday at the Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration. This was organized by the Ministry of Health and Directorate of Mental Health of Sri Lanka. Veteran actor Channa Pereira's 5th movie, Yugatra, was launched in Colombo yesterday. The movie was written and directed by Channa Pereira, and Dinesh Subasinghe composed the music for the film. The film will be available for screening to the general public from the 20th of April. The Mahapota Award ceremony organised by the Mathura District Youth Club of the National Youth Services Council was held at the Ruhuna University. This award ceremony was held to appreciate students who showcased their skills in the field of aesthetics and art.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has delayed the implementation of a key part of the justice system overhaul plan, which has caused widespread protests and a strike.
The move followed the firing of the defense minister who had spoken against the plan, causing an unprecedented coordinated action that brought the country to a standstill. The proposed reforms would give the parliament control over the committee that appoints judges and the authority to override Supreme Court decisions with a basic majority. Critics claim this would make it difficult to remove the Prime Minister from power and may help Netanyahu, who is facing charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust. The proposed changes have sparked anger from nearly all parts of Israel society, including the military, and the opposition leader called it the biggest crisis in the history of the country. Netanyahu accused an extremist minority of trying to divide the nation and did not acknowledge his own role in the country's upheaval.
6 people, including 3 children, have been killed in a primary school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee, USA.
6 people, 3 children and 3 staff have been killed in a shooting by an ex-student at a school in the U.S. city of Nashville, Tennessee. 3 of the victims were pupils aged 9 or under at Covenant School. Police said the suspect was 28-year-old Audrey Hale, who was armed with 3 guns, including a semi-automatic rifle, and was shot dead by police. The attack was America's 129th mass shooting of 2023.
Now, the second ODI between Sri Lanka and New Zealand was abandoned due to bad weather.
New Zealand and Sri Lanka look to square off in the second match of the ODI series in Christchurch on Tuesday. However, the match was abandoned without a ball being bowled due to persistent rain. The Kiwis went 1-0 up in the series after a comprehensive 198-run victory in the first match on Saturday.
And with that, we wrap up the news for now. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Shehan Ranatunga. Thank you for watching.